Sarah Palin is defending the police for arresting Ahmed Mohamed, who was, of course, the 14-year-old who brought in a homemade rebuilt clock to school. She called that whole arrest totally reasonable. Now, she also called initial media reports of his arrest fishy, and said that school officials were totally justified in thinking that his clock was a bomb. Interesting. Now, she wrote on her Facebook page, "Yep, believing that a clock in a school pencil box is like believing Barack Obama is ruling over the most transparent administration in history." Right, that's a clock, and I'm the Queen of England. Hail to the Queen, man. Hail to the Queen. Queen of stupid. Okay. Yes, dumbass, it's a clock. It was taken from its case, taken apart, and put in a pencil box. Even a dunce like you should be able to understand the mechanics behind that. A clock in a pencil box is still a clock. It is not a bomb. Ugh. It's amazing that I have to point that out. Should I talk slower? Because I don't know if she'll still get it. Now, she went on to make some comparisons of how some people were suspended from school but didn't get any fanfare, didn't get any invites to the White House, or didn't get anything like that. Now, what are her examples? Well, she said, "Friends, consider the kids disciplined and or kicked out of school for bringing squirt guns to school or taking bites out of a Pop-Tart until it resembled..." I'm sorry. Speaking of Pop-Tarts. Somebody's a tart. Okay. Until it resembled, to some politically correct yahoo, a gun. Or the student out deer hunting with his dad early one morning who forgot he had a box of ammo in his truck when he parked in a school lot later that day. Whereas Ahmed Mohamed, spelled wrong, an evidently obstinate answering student bringing in a homemade clock that obviously could be seen by conscientious teachers as a dangerous, wired-up, bomb-looking contraption. Teachers who are told if you see something, say something, gets invited to the White House. Proper sentence structure is hard, apparently. Also, apparently something else that's hard is making an actual point. What the fuck was she talking about? Obstinate? Obstinate. She calls the kid obstinate. How? He told them repeatedly, "Oh, by the way, this is not a bomb. It's not a bomb. It's not a bomb." And besides, he brought this thing to show his engineering teacher. His engineering teacher said, "Okay, yes, that's great. Please don't show anybody else. You're going to scare the crap out of the other bigots." Okay, so he put it in his bag and kept it till English class, where it went off. An alarm went off, and then he, of course, after it was found out that he had this alarm clock, he showed it to his teacher, who then thought it was a bomb. That's what happened. Now, as to her other examples, I agree that some of these examples are good points. For example, in 2013, a Maryland school suspended a 7-year-old after he chewed his Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun and began waving it around. Now, this is a good example of how school zero tolerance policies are bullshit. She actually makes a cogent point there, although she makes it in the wrong way. She says that instead of the kid not being kicked out of school, which of course they claim it's for disruptive behavior and not for the Pop-Tart, I don't know, I think the zero tolerance policies are, as I said, bullshit, but nonetheless, she's saying that instead of him not getting in trouble, that Ahmed Mohamed, for bringing a clock, was obstinate and should have gotten in trouble. That's insane. That's making a good point, but going the complete opposite way. All right. Now, another one. 6 students in Michigan were suspended after school officials found firearms in their car they'd used on a deer hunt. Look, man, even I would have been a little bit kinder on that one and said, hey, go home, drop off your guns. You're not supposed to have these guns on school property. That's dangerous. That's dangerous, dangerous. You're not supposed to have them. Go home, take them back, and then come back to school. I'm sure if you explain the situation, people are like, will be more understanding. Once again, I have an issue with zero tolerance policies, as you've noticed. Alright. Now, in Mohammed's case, as I said, police knew that it wasn't a bomb. You could just look at it and be like, oh, it looks like a clock in a pencil case. It's not a bomb. That's obvious. And they knew it, and they still arrested him. Now, here's where Sarah Palin gets even more ridiculous because she decides to blame Obama. She said, by the way, President Obama's practice of jumping in cases prematurely to interject himself as the cool savior, wanting so badly to attach himself to the issue of the day, got old years ago. Billy. And yet here you are, doing the absolute same thing. Pot meet kettle? I'm just saying. Now she also writes, remember him accusing all police officers doing their job as acting stupid? Claiming if he had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Claiming, well let me stop there for a second. Because he would. Because he's black. No common sense. God, she's a dunce. Okay, let me continue. Claiming he didn't need to know who was at fault in an industrial accident, so he'd know whose ass to kick, etc., etc. Those actions are about as presidential as his selfie stick. Here's the funny thing about Sarah Palin. She wants to talk about being presidential. This is coming from somebody who was just recently in an interview with America News 1 or whatever, One America News, was fawning over presidential candidate Donald fucking Trump. So, and even doing that, in her pea brain, somehow President Obama acts less presidential than Donald Trump. A guy who has said before things like, she was bleeding, of Megyn Kelly, she was bleeding from her wherever, after criticizing Megyn Kelly for asking tough questions. And who's taking shots at Carly Fiorina, saying, look at that face. Could you imagine that face as our president? Oh, but of course he meant her personality, right? Of course, that's what it was. But no, she looks up to that guy, and then, or sucks up to that guy, and then she wants to talk about looking presidential and selfie sticks? Really? That's what she wants to talk about. Is this woman self-aware at all? Is she aware how stupid that she sounds? I don't know. I don't know how you could not be. But there it is.